Okay, boys, so next grammar is conditionals within an indirect statement. Now, there are similarities here between conditionals and time clauses and relative clauses, all within an indirect statement. The main similarity is that the subjunctive is involved. So we're going to start with open or unknown conditionals. So ones that could potentially happen, or ones that are happening or have happened, but the reader is unaware of. So they've all got an idea of potential. First of all, simply, the apodosis is the bit that's the indirect statement. So the accusative and infinitive, that's the main clause. And that would be kind of the result of the condition, and that would be accusative infinitive. So that's the kind of easier, more straightforward bit. The protasis is where it gets a little bit complicated. So that's the if part of the sentence, and this is formed with the subjunctive using extended sequence. So that means that it could basically be any tense of the subjunctive. There's the sneaky little issue here again of the hidden future perfect. So if the hidden future perfect was used originally in the condition before it was put in an indirect statement, then the pluperfect is going to be used in a historic sequence. Okay, so we've got to watch out for that and make sure we don't translate it as had. The thing that will point it out to us is that the infinitive in the apodosis will be in the future, so we know it's about the future, so therefore the original verb was future perfect rather than it being properly full on in the past. Okay, so there are some examples on page 92. The easiest thing to do with this stuff is to work through the examples, figure out what's going on. So we'll start with this one. Dixit puerum si hoc faceret erachorum esse. Things to notice are the future infinitive at the end, and then the imperfect subjunctive within the if part of the clause. So easy to begin with. He said that the boy. So we start with the indirect statement, we start with the accusative, and then we can translate the infinitive next if you like, as that's how we've always translated indirect statements. So he said that the boy would make a mistake because it's future. Okay, si hoc faceret, if he did this. Okay, so that one's pretty straightforward. It tells you in the textbook that the original statement there would have been si hoc facies erabis, so both those verbs originally would have been future. So the infinitive has stayed future, but because the indirect statement is historic, the si clause, the facies, has become imperfect subjunctive just to fit in with that historic sequence. Okay, the next one. He said that the boy. Okay, very similar structure with the infinitive. We've got another future infinitive here. So would be punished. But we've got si hoc feciset, pluperfect. Now we don't want to translate this as pluperfect because dachorum esse is future. So that tells us that this original statement would have been, as it says in the textbook, si hoc feceris poenas dabis. So we would have had a future perfect verb followed by a future verb. So therefore that feciset represents the future perfect rather than the past. So we would say that the boy would be punished if he did this rather than if he had done this. So note actually that the tenses of the first and second examples there are exactly the same. Would make a mistake, would be punished if he did this, if he did this. The reason for that is that the first one tells us that the actions are happening at the same time. And the second one, the pluperfect, is there to tell us that one action happened before the other. A good rule to follow about the pluperfect subjunctive is not to get too bogged down in, oh, we must translate it as had, but to remember that feciset, the pluperfect subjunctive, represents a completed action. Okay, so in the second example, he's done that action before he's being punished, which is why it needs to be pluperfect subjunctive, and which is why in the original statement it would have been future perfect. In the first example, he doesn't have to have done anything to be told that he's making a mistake. It could be happening at the same time, which is why it's imperfect and not pluperfect subjunctive. Okay, third example. He said that the boy was making a mistake, errare, after a perfect tense verb. Si hoc faceret, if he was doing this. So it becomes way simpler when the future infinitive isn't involved. Was making a mistake if he was doing this. Quite straightforward. Final example. He said that the boy, eravisse, had made a mistake si hoc fecesset, if he did this. Okay, so again, the pluperfect subjunctive there represents the fact that the boy has already done something before the rest of the action. And it needs to be pluperfect subjunctive because dixit makes the whole thing historic. Okay, so next up on page 92 is exercise 326. I'm going to leave that to you guys in a minute. I'm going to go through 327, the English to Latin, with you right now in this video. It's up to you how challenging you make this. If you want to pause the video for each question and have a go at it yourself and then play it to reveal the answer, that's great. If you just want to watch me go through it so that you can get a bit more of a grip on these weird conditionals within indirect statements, that's fine as well. It's entirely up to you. So starting with number 1, we're given the English sentence, the woman said that the messenger had made a mistake if he said these things. Okay, so we've got had made a mistake here, so we're starting to think about everything being in the past. So let's do the simple bits first. So femina dixit, that the messenger, so the messenger is the accusative. Now let's get rid of the if bit first, the trickier bit. So if he said these things, he had made a mistake. If he said these things is going to be pluperfect because it's a completed action and because dixit makes it historic. Okay, so si haec dixisset. Okay, so if he said these things, he had made a mistake, so we just need the verb eravisse. Remember that will go pluperfect when it's translated because the dixit pushes back a tense. So eravisse will go from perfect to pluperfect in the translation. Okay, so again, we've got this horrible thing going on with the pluperfect subjunctive dixisset where we're not translating it as had, but we are translating it in essence of it's a completed action, it's done. Number 2, the teacher promised that the work would be easy if the children listened. So magister promisit. I'm going for opus, the neuter noun, so that the work. So that's an accusative, but it looks weird because it's neuter. So that the work. If the children listened, okay? So the work's going to be easy whilst the children are listening to this teacher. So, si infantes audirent would be easy. Facile in my neuter form, futurem, again in neuter essay. Okay, if you think about that sentence in an original statement, in Latin you would say, the work will be easy if the children will listen. So therefore, when you put it into a conditional within an indirect statement, you have the future infinitive, and then you have some form of the subjunctive that shows you that that's happening at the same time, but it needs to be historic because promesa is historic, which is why it goes into the imperfect subjunctive. It doesn't go into the pluperfect subjunctive because it's not a completed action. Number 3. The general said that the soldiers were always happy if they had food and wine. Imperator, dixit, that the soldiers, militares, if they had food and wine. Si cibum vinumque, it's got to be historic, so haberent semper lightos esse, because they're happy and they've got food and wine at the same time. It isn't a completed action, so it's imperfect subjunctive. Number 4, the girl believed the boy had been justly punished if he did such things. So puella credidit puerum. So that's your accusative as part of your accusative infinitive. So the boy, if he did such things, so he's going to be punished once he's done those things. So that has to be a completed action. So si talia such things, feciset, if he did such things, completed, had been justly punished. So juste poenas dedisse. So that's the perfect infinitive, which becomes pluperfect when you combine it with the perfect tense of credidit. Okay. Number 5, the old man said that the boys were stupid if they were waiting for a reward. So senex dixit, that the boys, pueros, if they were waiting for a reward, si premium expectarent, continuous action, imperfect subjunctive. They were stupid, stultos essay. Okay, so that is a load of open and unknown conditionals within the indirect statement. Okay, so check through those, watch this video again if you have to, and make sure you understand what's going on. But just remember, when it comes down to it, think about, is this a completed action? Has this actually happened? What tense is my infinitive, and what does that tell me about how I need to translate the subjunctive? And also, what makes most sense within the context of whatever story I'm reading right now?